Would you help a struggling mother and her daughters if you discovered she was someone you once loved? The bitter cold sliced through Sarah Johnson's thin, worn coat, wrapping around her like an unwelcome embrace. She sat huddled against the rough brick wall of an alley, her arms wrapped protectively around her two daughters, Grace and Emma. The twins slept, their small bodies pressed against her for warmth, their faces calm, too calm for children living in such a cruel world. Sarah's fingers, numb and trembling, gently stroked Emma's tangled blonde hair. Her other arm held Grace, who clung to her mother's sleeve, even in sleep. The city around them was alive, distant sirens, rushing footsteps, muffled conversations. But here, in the cold shadowed corner, they were invisible. "Mommy," Grace whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind. "Why is it always so cold?" Sarah forced a smile, her voice soft, trying to sound warm, even though she felt nothing but the chill. "Because winter is here, sweetheart, but that means we get to snuggle closer, and that's the best part." Emma stirred, her tiny fingers gripping Sarah's sleeve even tighter. "I don't like the cold," she murmured, her voice muffled by the coat. "I want to go home." Home. The word pierced Sarah's heart. Once, home had meant a place of warmth, a roof over their heads, a place filled with laughter. Now, it was just a memory, a dream slipping further away with each passing night. Her throat tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "We have each other, my love." "That's what makes anywhere we go a home." Grace's bright blue eyes looked up at her. "Will we ever have a real house again, with big windows and warm beds?" Sarah hesitated, then leaned down to kiss Grace's forehead. "Yes, my love, one day we will." But she didn't know how. Every day was a battle fighting for scraps, searching for a warm corner, trying to keep her daughters safe. Her own stomach growled, a reminder of the half-eaten sandwich she had given the girls hours ago, the only food they had managed to get. Her fingers absent-mindedly touched the silver ring on her hand, a cold, simple band that once meant everything, a promise of love, a future that never came to be. Now it was just a reminder of a life she had lost. The city moved around them, people passing by, bundled in coats, their eyes avoiding the sight of a mother and her children, huddled on the cold pavement. To them, Sarah was just another shadow in the city's darkness, a reminder of a world they chose to ignore. "Mommy," Grace whispered again, her voice softer now. "Why do people walk past us like we don't exist?" Sarah's chest tightened. How could she explain to a child that the world often looked away from what made it uncomfortable? That people chose to pretend suffering didn't exist rather than face it? "They're busy," Sarah whispered, brushing a tear from Grace's cheek. "Sometimes they don't stop because they're rushing to their homes, their families." "But we're people too," Grace murmured, frowning. "Yes, we are," Sarah replied, her voice breaking just slightly. "And one day, someone with a kind heart will see us. They will help us." But even as she spoke, she felt the weight of her own words. She had told herself the same thing for so long, but the world was a cold place, colder than the winter wind biting at her cheeks. "Mommy," Emma murmured, her voice soft and drowsy. "Do you think Daddy thinks about us?" Sarah's heart twisted, but she kept her voice calm. "I don't know, baby, but you have me, and I will never leave you." The girls didn't say anything more. They didn't need to. Even at their young age, they understood. Their father was gone, a ghost from a life Sarah could never get back. Her fingers brushed against the silver ring again, its cool metal a painful reminder. Once, it had symbolized love, a promise of forever. Now, it was just another empty memory. A cold wind swept through the alley, and Sarah pulled the thin blanket tighter around her daughters. "Close your eyes, my loves. I'll keep you warm." But even as she whispered those words, She knew they were only that words. Warmth was a luxury they no longer had. Safety was a dream slipping further from their grasp. As the city lights shimmered in the distance, Sarah felt the crushing weight of hopelessness pressing down on her. She was their mother, their protector. Yet all she could do was hold them close, whispering empty promises, and hope that somehow, against all odds, tomorrow would be just a little less cruel. The city lights blurred in the misty evening, a sea of flickering red and white beneath the sleek black luxury sedan. Alexander Reed leaned back in the leather seat, his fingers tapping absently against his knee, his eyes drifting over the endless line of cars ahead. Traffic was a miserable crawl, another late night after another long meeting, and exhaustion was settling in. "Another 10 minutes, sir," his driver muttered, eyes fixed on the road. Alexander sighed, loosening his tie slightly, trying to fight the sense of frustration gnawing at him. His life was a maze of meetings, negotiations, and obligations, a world of luxury that somehow always felt suffocating. He turned to look out the window, letting his gaze wander. The city was alive, neon lights glowing in the rain-soaked streets, people rushing past, seeking warmth and shelter. And then, his heart skipped a beat. There, huddled against a cold brick wall in the alleyway, a woman sat clutching 2 small children. Her coat was worn, threadbare, barely enough to shield them from the biting cold. The children were curled against her, their tiny faces buried in her arms, trying to escape the wind's cruel touch. Something about her struck him, an ache of familiarity he couldn't quite place. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, studying her through the misted glass. Was it the way she cradled the children, her arms a shield against the world? Or was it the silver ring on her finger, catching the faint glow of a streetlight? Alexander's breath caught. That ring. It wasn't just any ring. It was the same one he had slipped onto a delicate hand years ago, a promise he thought would last forever. "Stop the car," he ordered, his voice sharp, his pulse racing. "Sir?" The driver glanced at him, startled. "Stop!" "The car," Alexander insisted, and without another word, the car pulled to a halt beside the curb. He pushed the door open, stepping out into the cold night air. His shoes splashed against the wet pavement, but he barely noticed. His gaze was fixed on the woman, her face partly hidden by a curtain of messy blonde hair. But when she lifted her head slightly, his heart twisted. It was her. It was Sarah. The girl he had once loved. The girl he had promised a future with. But now, she was a shadow of herself, her cheeks hollow, her eyes dull with exhaustion. And the 2 children in her arms, twins, with bright blonde hair and pale faces, clung to her with a desperate trust. "Sarah?" His voice was a whisper, carried away by the wind. He took a hesitant step forward, his mind racing, struggling to make sense of it. How had she ended up like this? What had happened? But Sarah's eyes, though weary, sharpened instantly at the sound of her name. Her body tensed, instinctively pulling the girls closer. She didn't recognize him at first, or maybe she didn't want to. Another step closer, and finally, she looked at him. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of shock, then fear. "No, no," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Stay back. Sarah, it's me, Alexander." His voice broke, disbelief and pain tangled together. But Sarah's gaze hardened. Her arms tightened around her daughters, her expression shifting from fear to anger. "Leave us alone," she snapped, forcing herself to her feet, the girls still clinging to her. "Wait, please," Alexander pleaded, his heart pounding. I need to know. Are you okay? What happened to you?" "What happened?" Sarah's laugh was bitter, cold. "Life happened, Alexander. The kind you never have to deal with, so please, just go." "We don't need your pity." "It's not pity," he insisted, taking another cautious step forward, careful not to frighten her further. I I didn't know. I thought... You thought what? Sarah's voice was sharp, defensive. You thought I'd disappear and everything would be fine? That I wouldn't exist once you walked away? I didn't walk away, Alexander whispered, the ache in his chest growing. I was forced to. I don't care. Sarah's voice trembled, her anger cracking into something else, a deep, aching pain. You have your life, Alexander, and I have mine. Just, please, leave us alone. The twins stirred, their small faces peeking up at their mother, fear and confusion in their eyes. Alexander's heart shattered at the sight. They were so young, so fragile, and they were hers. His gaze softened, but Sarah's glare only grew more desperate. Mommy, Grace whispered, clutching at Sarah's sleeve. Who is he? No one, baby, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. He's no one. The words were a knife in Alexander's chest. He wanted to shout, to tell her that she was wrong, that he wasn't just no one. But he saw the panic in her eyes, the way she shielded the girls, and he realized the truth. He was a stranger to her now, a ghost from a life she had left behind. Sarah, he whispered one last time, but she had already turned, pulling her daughters away, disappearing into the shadows of the alley. Alexander stood frozen, the world a blur around him. The rain grew heavier, drops soaking his hair, but he didn't care. His eyes remained fixed on the empty alley, his heart a storm of regret and shock. How had she ended up like this? How had the girl he once loved become a struggling mother on the streets? And those children, the twins with their bright eyes. His pulse quickened as a realization struck him. Those girls, Grace and Emma, they had his eyes. Sir? His driver's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Shall we go? No. Alexander's voice was firm, his gaze still fixed on the darkness. Follow her. I need to know where she goes. Yes, sir. As the car rolled forward, Alexander's mind raced, a single thought burning in his chest. He had lost her once. But now that he had found her again, he wouldn't make the same mistake. The wind howled through the narrow alley, cold and unrelenting. Sarah Johnson's heart pounded as she led her daughters through the twisting streets, her breath coming in quick, desperate gasps. She hadn't looked back, but she could feel his presence, the ghost of a life she had buried long ago. Alexander. The name echoed in her mind, a painful reminder of promises broken. Mommy? Grace's small voice pulled her from the whirl of thoughts. Are we going somewhere safe? Yes, baby. Sarah tried to keep her voice steady, even as her chest tightened. We're just finding a warm place to rest. But in truth, she didn't know where to go. The shelters were full, the streets were growing colder, and her last dollar had gone to buy the girls a piece of bread that morning. Survival had become a cruel game, one she was losing. As they turned another corner, a sleek black car slowly pulled up beside them. The window rolled down, and there he was, Alexander, his face a mix of worry and determination. Sarah, please, just talk to me. No. Sarah pulled the girls closer, her voice sharp. Stay away from us. Please, just let me help. His voice was softer now, almost pleading. I can't just leave you out here, not like this. You've done it before, Sarah shot back, bitterness lacing her words. Alexander's expression tightened. I was young. I made a mistake, but I'm here now. Let me fix it. There's nothing to fix. But even as she said it, Sarah knew it wasn't true. She was freezing, starving, and her daughters were suffering. Pride had kept her going for so long, but now it felt like a weight she could no longer bear. Mommy, I'm cold. Emma's tiny voice was barely a whisper, her fingers trembling against Sarah's hand, and that was it. The final blow. Sarah's shoulders slumped, her fierce expression cracking. Fine. Fine. You want to help? Her voice was thick with anger, pain and something close to defeat. Then help. Alexander's relief was visible, a faint smile crossing his face. Get in. I promise. I just want to make sure you and the girls are safe. Sarah hesitated for a heartbeat, then lifted the girls, helping them into the back seat. She climbed in after them, her body tense, her fingers never letting go of Grace and Emma's hands. The warmth of the car was a shock, almost painful against her numb skin. Her daughters curled against her, their eyes already drooping with exhaustion. Alexander climbed in beside them, giving his driver a quick nod. The car began to move, its engine a low hum that felt like a distant dream. Silence settled over them, thick and uncomfortable. Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the window, her reflection staring back tired, pale, and older than she remembered. I know you're angry, Alexander began softly. And I don't blame you. But please, believe me, I never wanted this for you. Sarah's jaw clenched. And yet, here we are. He looked away, shame flickering across his face. I thought you would be okay. That you were strong enough to survive? Sarah's voice was sharp, her anger flaring again. I did survive, Alexander, but at what cost? My girls grew up without a home, without enough to eat, because I wasn't enough. That's not true. His voice was firm. You're more than enough. I was the one who wasn't. Silence again. Sarah's eyes fell to her daughters, their faces calm now, lost in the comfort of sleep. For a moment she felt a bitter twist in her chest. Was this what it felt like? Warmth, security, the promise of safety? A world she had fought to keep them alive in, but never dared to dream of. The car pulled through towering iron gates, the world beyond the window transforming into something almost unreal. Manicured gardens, towering marble pillars, a grand mansion that loomed like a castle in the mist. Sarah's heart tightened. She didn't belong here, not anymore. Where are we? She whispered, fear creeping into her voice. My home, Alexander replied, his voice gentle. You'll be safe here. The car came to a stop, and a butler stepped forward, opening the door. Sarah's instinct was to shield her daughters, to pull them back, but Alexander's voice was calm. It's okay. He's here to help. The girls woke, their sleepy eyes wide with awe as they stared at the grand house. Is this a castle, Mommy? Grace whispered. Something like that, Sarah murmured, her heart pounding. Alexander stepped out, then turned, offering his hand. Sarah stared at it, hesitation clawing at her. But then she saw the warmth in his eyes, a warmth she hadn't seen in so long. Reluctantly, she took his hand, letting him help her out. The girls followed, their small hands gripping her coat. As they stepped into the grand foyer, the warm air surrounded them, the scent of fresh flowers and polished wood filling their senses. A grand staircase stretched upward, chandeliers glittering above. Sarah felt small, out of place, like an intruder in a world that wasn't hers. This way, Alexander said, leading them gently. I've had rooms prepared for you, somewhere warm, with a soft bed. You can rest. But Sarah's hand tightened around her daughter's. And then what? She whispered, her voice trembling. What happens when you change your mind? When you decide this was a mistake? Alexander's face softened. I won't turn my back on you. Not again. But even as he spoke, Sarah couldn't help but feel a familiar ache in her chest, a whisper of doubt, of fear. Because in this world of glittering chandeliers and soft carpets, she was still just a mother who had fought too long in the cold, and a part of her still feared that all of this, the warmth, the safety, his kindness, could vanish in an instant. Sarah Johnson stood in the grand guest room, her fingers brushing against the soft, silken bedspread. It was warm here, the soft glow of a bedside lamp casting a gentle light across the room. Grace and Emma were already asleep, their small bodies nestled beneath thick blankets, their faces peaceful for the first time in weeks. But Sarah couldn't rest. Not yet. Her gaze drifted to the window, the rain tapping softly against the glass. Outside, the world was dark and cold, a world she had fought so hard to survive. But here, in this mansion of polished marble and golden chandeliers, she felt more like a ghost than ever. She wrapped her arms around herself, the chill of fear pressing against her chest. How had she ended up here? How had a single encounter on the street brought her back into the world of Alexander Reed, a world she had left behind so long ago? But had she ever truly left it? Her fingers absently touched the silver ring on her hand, its cool metal a painful reminder. It was the same ring Alexander had given her all those years ago, a symbol of love, of forever. But forever had shattered. She could still remember that summer night, the warm breeze rustling the leaves as she stood under the starry sky, her heart racing with a joy she had never known. Alexander had taken her hand, his gaze warm, his voice steady. "I love you, Sarah. I always will." But love hadn't been enough. Not in his world. She had been young, wild, and full of dreams. He had been her everything, a boy from a world of wealth and privilege, and yet he had looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered. They had spent countless nights dreaming of a future together, whispering promises beneath the moonlight. But when she found out she was pregnant, those dreams had crumbled. Her parents had been furious. Her mother's voice still echoed in her mind, sharp and cold. "You've ruined yourself, Sarah. A child with him. He will never stay. Boys like him don't marry girls like you." But she hadn't believed them. She had believed in him. She had gone to Alexander, her heart racing, her hands trembling, clutching the pregnancy test. But the look on his face had shattered her. I don't know if I can do this," he had whispered, his voice distant, his eyes avoiding hers. "You don't know." Her voice had trembled, disbelief twisting in her chest. "I have a future, Sarah. A career. My family. They'll never. Your family." Tears had burned in her eyes. "What about us? What about our family?" But he hadn't answered. He had walked away, his figure fading into the darkness, leaving her standing alone, her heart breaking, her world collapsing. Her parents' words had become prophecy. They had thrown her out, their disappointment a cold finality. She had been 17, pregnant, and utterly alone. The months that followed had been a blur of pain and fear. Shelters, nights spent on freezing benches, hunger twisting her stomach. And then, finally, the night the twins were born, Grace and Emma. Tiny, fragile miracles. She had cried when she held them, her tears a mix of joy and despair. But she had survived. She had fought for them, shielded them, given them every piece of herself, and all the while she had told herself she didn't need anyone, especially not him. But now she was here, in his world again, a world of soft beds and warm light, a world she didn't belong to, and he was trying to help. He spoke of regret, of wanting to make things right, but how could she trust him? How could she believe in a man who had once left her in the darkness? A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She turned, her heart racing. The door opened slowly, and there he was, Alexander, his tall figure framed by the warm light of the hallway, his expression hesitant, almost fearful. I wanted to check on you." "Make sure you and the girls are comfortable," he murmured. "We're fine." Her voice was cold, a wall between them, more comfortable than we've been in a long time. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Sarah, please. I know this is overwhelming." "But I meant what I said. I want to help." "Help?" Her voice broke, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You want to help now? Where were you when I needed you? when I was scared and alone, when I had no one." Alexander's face fell, his shoulders slumping. "I was a coward," he whispered. "I was young and afraid. My family, they told me I would lose everything. And I listened. I was weak." "Weak?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I was 17, Alexander. 17 and pregnant. And you ran." "I know." His voice was pained, his hands clenching at his sides. "And I have never stopped regretting it." "Regret?" Sarah shook her head, the tears spilling over now. "I don't want your regret. I don't want your guilt. I don't know what I want." Silence hung between them, thick and heavy. Alexander's gaze dropped to the floor, his own tears threatening to fall. "I can't change the past, but I can try. I can try to make things right now. Please, Sarah, let me help." Her breath trembled, her chest tight with a mix of anger and longing. "Help? That's what you call this? A warm bed? A fancy house? Do you think that erases everything? No? But it's a start. It's all I can do right now." Sarah looked away, her eyes settling on Grace and Emma, sleeping peacefully, their small hands curled against the soft pillows. For them, only for them. "Fine," she whispered, her voice hollow. "We'll stay, for now." Alexander's shoulders eased slightly, but the sadness didn't leave his eyes. "Thank you." But as he stepped back, closing the door behind him, Sarah felt a familiar ache in her chest, a fear she couldn't shake. Because she knew this world wasn't hers, and she wasn't sure if she would ever truly belong in it. Days turned into a week, and Sarah Johnson found herself trapped in a world that felt more like a dream than reality. The grand halls of Alexander's mansion stretched endlessly, filled with glittering chandeliers, polished marble floors, and silent watching portraits. A place of wealth and warmth, but for Sarah, it felt like a gilded cage. Every morning she woke to the scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries, a sight that once would have seemed like a miracle. Grace and Emma quickly grew fond of the warmth, their laughter echoing through the vast corridors. For them, this was an adventure, a fairy tale brought to life. "Look, Mummy," Emma squealed one morning, her tiny fingers running over the soft plush pillows on the oversized bed. "It's so soft." Grace twirled in a dress one of the maids had found for her, her bright blue eyes shining. "We look like princesses." Sarah forced a smile, watching them with a mix of joy and fear. She wanted them to be happy. She wanted them to feel safe. But every step she took on the plush carpets, every warm meal she ate, felt like a betrayal, a reminder that none of this was truly hers. She tried to keep her distance, avoiding Alexander whenever she could. But he was always there, a quiet, steady presence. He never pushed, never demanded. Instead, he lingered in the background, watching her with a cautious hope in his eyes. "Is everything okay?" he would ask gently whenever their paths crossed. "We're fine," Sarah would reply, her voice clipped, her guard firmly in place. But the truth was, she wasn't fine. She was lost. Lost in this world of luxury, of second chances. A world that whispered of kindness, but reminded her of betrayal. One afternoon, she found herself wandering the garden, the cool breeze rustling the autumn leaves. The twins were playing in the maze of flowers, their laughter like a soft melody. And for a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to feel the warmth of the sun, to close her eyes and forget the shadows that clung to her heart. "Mommy! Look!" Grace called out, her small hands filled with red and yellow petals. "We made you a crown!" Emma rushed over, her cheeks pink with joy, and together they placed the delicate circle of flowers on Sarah's head. "You're the queen now," Emma giggled. Sarah's lips curved into a genuine smile, the kind she hadn't felt in years. "A queen, huh? Then I declare today a day of adventure." The twins squealed, dancing around her, their laughter a balm to her weary soul. For the first time in so long, she felt a sliver of peace, but the moment was short-lived. As they returned to the mansion, Sarah's heart tightened at the sight of Alexander, watching them from the balcony. His face was soft, a gentle smile playing at his lips as he watched the girls twirl in the sunlight. For a brief second, she saw something in his eyes, a longing, a quiet sadness. And it terrified her, because she knew that look. It was the same look he had given her all those years ago, when they were young and foolish, wrapped in whispered promises beneath the stars. She turned away, her hand instinctively tightening around the girls. She couldn't let herself believe it. Not again. Not when she had barely pieced herself back together. That night, as she tucked Grace and Emma into bed, their soft breaths filled the room. Sarah sat by the window, the cool glass against her forehead, her eyes lost in the misty glow of the city lights beyond the mansion walls. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She turned to see Alexander standing there, his expression cautious.
"I didn't mean to interrupt," he whispered. "You didn't," Sarah replied, her voice quieter now. I saw you and the girls today. They looked so happy." He stepped closer, but kept his distance as if afraid of crossing an invisible line. "And so did you." It's just the garden." She looked away, her fingers absently twisting the silver ring on her hand. "It's beautiful." "It is." Silence settled between them, thick and heavy. "Sarah, I don't want you to feel trapped here." "I don't." But her voice wavered. "You can leave anytime you want. I won't stop you." His voice was steady, but there was a sadness beneath it. "But I hope you don't. Not just for the girls, but for you." Her chest tightened, her eyes stinging. Don't do this, Alexander." "Do what?" His voice was gentle, a whisper of pain. "Care? Care?" Sarah laughed, a bitter sound. "You didn't care before. You left." "You let me." She choked on the words, turning away, her hand pressed to her mouth. "I know." His voice was a broken whisper. "I will never forgive myself for that." "I don't want your guilt," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I don't want your pity. I don't even know why we're here. You're here because you and the girls deserve a safe place." He stepped closer, his voice steady now. "Because I made a mistake. But I won't make it again. I won't leave you." Sarah's shoulders trembled, her fingers gripping the edge of the window. "But I don't know how to trust you. I don't know if I ever can." "Then let me show you," Alexander whispered. "Not with words." "With time, with actions. Let me show you that I'm not the man I was." Silence. Sarah's tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't turn. She couldn't. If she looked at him now, she knew she would break. After a long moment, she heard the soft click of the door closing behind him, leaving her alone once more. But even as she stood there, her fingers tracing the cold glass, a tiny warmth stirred in her heart, a whisper of hope she wasn't ready to acknowledge. Not yet. But maybe someday. The gentle warmth of the morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the mansion, casting a soft glow across the polished floors. Sarah Johnson stood in the kitchen, watching Grace and Emma giggle as they spread butter over their toast, their cheeks pink with joy. For a brief moment, everything felt normal. But normal was a fragile illusion. "Mommy, look, I made a smiley face," Emma beamed, holding up her toast, smeared with jam, in a crooked, sticky grin. Sarah forced a smile, her heart swelling with warmth. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Alexander entered the kitchen, his smile softening as he saw the girls. He leaned against the doorway, his eyes finding Sarah's. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." "Yes."
Thank you, Sarah replied, her voice gentle but guarded. Things between them were better, but she still kept her distance. It was safer that way. But just as Emma was about to show her toast creation to Alexander, a sharp, frantic knock echoed through the grand hallway. The cheerful warmth seemed to shatter instantly. "I'll see who it is," Alexander murmured, his expression shifting to something tense. He stepped out of the kitchen, his long strides carrying him quickly to the front door. Sarah tried to keep her attention on the girls, but her heart raced. Moments later, Alexander returned, his face pale, his jaw clenched. In his hand, he held a plain white envelope, no name, no address, just a thick, crumpled letter. "Sarah." His voice was low, a mix of caution and fear. "We need to talk." Her stomach twisted. She led the girls into the living room, settling them with their favorite stuffed animals. "Stay here, okay? I'll be right back." The twins nodded, too engrossed in their toys to notice the fear in their mother's eyes. Sarah followed Alexander into his study, the door clicking shut behind them. He handed her the letter without a word. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded it, her eyes scanning the cold, printed words. "You thought you could disappear, Sarah? You thought you could hide. But I see you. I see everything. You belong to me. And I'm coming for you." Her breath caught, her vision blurred. No, it can't be. It's him, isn't it? Alexander's voice was tight. "Daniel Harper." Sarah's knees weakened, but she gripped the edge of the desk, forcing herself to stay upright. Memories crashed over her, his cruel smile, his angry words, the way he had walked away without a second glance. Daniel, the man she thought she had escaped, the man who had abandoned her and the girls. He can't be here," she whispered, her voice a broken plea. "He doesn't want them. He never did." "Then why is he threatening you?" Alexander's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening. "Sarah, I won't let him near you. Or the girls." "He's dangerous, Alexander," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. "You don't understand. He's not just a man who left. He's a man who destroys. If he wants something, he takes it." Alexander's hand reached out, gently gripping her shoulder. "Not this time. I won't let him take anything from you." But Sarah's fear didn't fade. I shouldn't have stayed. I've put you and the girls in danger. I should go." "We should leave." "No." Alexander's voice was firm, his grip gentle but unyielding. "This is your home now. You're safe here." But was anywhere safe when Daniel knew where they were? The days that followed were a blur of fear and uncertainty. Alexander doubled the security around the mansion, guards patrolling the grounds, cameras monitoring every corner. But even with the walls of safety around her, Sarah felt trapped. Every shadow seemed to hide his face. Every strange sound sent a chill down her spine. At night, she sat by the girl's bed, her eyes fixed on the door, her fingers gripping the silver ring on her hand like a lifeline. And then, one cold, rainy evening, the phone rang. Alexander answered, his voice tense, but then his expression changed, his face darkening. "Sarah?" His voice was sharp. "You need to hear this." He put the call on speaker. The voice on the other end was low, cold, dripping with mockery. "Hello, sweetheart. Did you miss me?" Sarah's blood froze. "Daniel? Oh, you remember me?" His laugh was a cruel, chilling sound. "How sweet. I hear you've upgraded your life. A mansion? A rich boyfriend? So you're still using people to survive." "I'm not." Her voice trembled. "I'm not using anyone." "But you used me," Daniel sneered. "You trapped me with your sob story, those kids, my kids. And now you think you can keep them from me? You never wanted them." Sarah's voice cracked. You walked away. People change, Sarah, and I want what's mine. No. You're not coming near them. Her voice grew firmer, her fear turning to anger. Stay away from us. Or what? Daniel's tone darkened. Your rich boyfriend gonna save you? Let's see how long that lasts. The call ended abruptly, the empty silence pressing against them. Sarah's hands shook, her breath coming in gasps. Alexander stepped forward, pulling her into his arms, his touch warm and strong. He won't touch you. I swear, Sarah, I won't let him hurt you. But Sarah's mind raced. She knew Daniel. He didn't make empty threats. And now, not only were her daughters in danger, but so was Alexander. Maybe we should leave, she whispered, her face buried against his chest. Maybe it's safer if we just disappear again. No, Alexander whispered, his fingers brushing through her hair. You're done running. You and the girls, you have a home here, with me. But he's not going to stop. Her voice was a broken whisper. Then we won't either, he whispered, his voice a promise. We fight, together. For the first time in years, Sarah felt the faintest flicker of hope. She had fought so long alone. But now she wasn't alone. But even as Alexander held her, a dark fear twisted in her heart. Because she knew Daniel Harper, and he never stopped. Until he won, the grand dining hall of the mansion was bathed in the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, the polished marble floors reflecting the golden light. Sarah Johnson sat stiffly at the long, elegant table, her fingers nervously twisting the napkin in her lap. Grace and Emma were beside her, their wide eyes filled with a mix of awe and uncertainty. Across from them, Henry Reed, Alexander's father, sat with an expression as cold as the polished silverware laid before him. His sharp, grey eyes moved slowly over Sarah, and then to the twins, lingering with a look of disdain. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Alexander sat at the head of the table, his posture calm, but his jaw tense. Father, he began, trying to maintain a steady tone. I wanted you to meet Sarah and her daughters. They will be staying here. Henry's thin lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no warmth in it. I can see that, though I must admit, I never imagined the Reed estate becoming a shelter. Sarah's chest tightened, but she said nothing. Grace shifted closer to her, sensing the tension, while Emma's fingers clutched at her mother's sleeve. They are my guests, Alexander replied, his voice firmer now. And I won't tolerate disrespect toward them. Guests? Henry's voice was a low, calculated drawl. Is that what you call them? Or are they simply another one of your charitable projects? A way for you to feel better about your poor decisions. Father, that's enough. Alexander's voice was sharp, a crack of anger beneath his calm. But Henry leaned forward, his steely gaze locking onto Sarah. I would like to hear from the young lady herself. Tell me, Ms. Johnson, what is it that brings you here? What story did you spin to earn my son's pity? Stop it. Alexander's voice was ice. They are here because I chose to help them. Because they needed a safe place. Is that so? Henry's eyes never left Sarah. And I suppose they have nowhere else to go. No family. No one who might question why they suddenly find themselves in the lap of luxury. Sarah's cheeks burned with shame, but she forced herself to look up. We were struggling. My daughters needed safety. Alexander offered us that. Nothing more. Struggling? Henry's voice was a mocking whisper. And I suppose that's his fault. Or is it yours, Ms. Johnson? Tell me, are you simply an opportunist? A woman who uses her children to secure a better life? Sarah's breath caught, her fingers trembling against the napkin. The room seemed to close in, the chandeliers glow cold and distant. But then a small voice broke the silence. Mommy is a good person. It was Grace, her voice soft but clear. She takes care of us. She makes sure we're warm, Even when she's cold, she gives us her food when we're hungry. Emma nodded, her tiny fingers curling around her mother's hand. She tells us stories and keeps us safe. Henry's expression flickered, a brief shadow of surprise crossing his face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the same cold, calculating gaze. "Charming," he muttered, leaning back in his chair. "Children always have such a pure view of the world." "Father," Alexander's voice was calm but laced with steel. "That's enough. Sarah and the girls are my guests. I won't have them treated like this." "Guests?" Henry's eyes narrowed. "Is that what you truly believe, Alexander? Or are you simply trying to rewrite history? Trying to soothe your conscience for abandoning her once before?" The words struck like a dagger. Sarah's face drained of color, and even Alexander seemed momentarily stunned. "Father," he began, but Henry stood, the weight of his presence filling the room. "I warned you once, Alexander. I told you that this girl would bring nothing but trouble. And now look, a woman off the streets and her children, living in our home, living off your kindness. And you expect me to pretend this is normal? This isn't about you." Alexander's voice rose, a rare fire burning in his eyes. "This is about doing the right thing. About giving them a chance." "A chance?" Henry's voice was a sneer. "Or a second chance for you to play the hero, to pretend you're noble? You were a fool then, and you're a fool now. I'd rather be a fool who cares than a man who's forgotten how to feel." Alexander's words echoed through the hall, the sharp crack of emotion breaking the air. Silence followed, thick and tense. Henry's face was a mask, but his eyes blazed with cold fury. He turned, his voice cutting like ice. "Remember this, Alexander, you can play savior all you want, but in the end, this family's legacy is mine to protect, and I won't watch you destroy it." With that, he strode out of the room, the heavy door swinging shut behind him. The echo of his footsteps faded, leaving only the quiet, fragile tension hanging in the air. Sarah's breath trembled, her fingers gently stroking Grace's hair, trying to comfort her daughter's anxious gaze. Emma's small hand remained in hers, warm and trusting, but all Sarah felt was a familiar, sinking shame. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. I shouldn't be here. This was a mistake." "Sarah, no." Alexander moved to her side, his voice a quiet plea. "My father, he doesn't understand. But this is your home. You and the girls belong here." "No." Sarah's voice was a whisper, her eyes glistening with tears. "We don't belong in your world. We never did." Before Alexander could respond, she rose, gently guiding the girls away from the table, their tiny steps echoing in the vast, empty hall. Her heart pounded, her vision blurred with tears. The mansion's warmth felt suffocating now, every glittering chandelier, every polished surface, a reminder that she was an outsider. But even as she led her daughters away, a small, quiet voice whispered beneath her fear, a voice that clung to the memory of Alexander's fierce, unwavering defense of her. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. The rain hammered against the tall windows of the mansion, each drop a frantic beat that seemed to echo Sarah's racing heart. The warm glow of the grand hall felt distant, almost suffocating. Grace and Emma played quietly in the living room, unaware of the tension hanging thick in the air. But Sarah couldn't shake the fear coiling in her chest. Daniel Harper was out there lurking, watching, waiting. His threats echoed in her mind, each word a shadow that pressed against her. "Are you okay?" Alexander's voice was gentle, his presence a steady warmth beside her. I don't know," she whispered, her fingers twisting the silver ring on her hand, a habit she couldn't break. "I thought we were safe here. I thought we could be safe." "You are safe," Alexander insisted,
his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "I've increased security. No one is getting in." But even as he spoke, a deep, uneasy fear twisted in Sarah's stomach. Because she knew Daniel, he didn't make empty threats, and he didn't just walk away. As if on cue, the doorbell rang sharp, insistent. Sarah's breath caught, her eyes locking with Alexander's. The butler appeared, his expression tense. "Sir, there is a man at the gate. He insists on seeing Miss Johnson." Sarah's blood ran cold. No, it can't be. It's him, isn't it?" Alexander's voice hardened, his expression darkening. Sarah's chest tightened. "Please, tell him to go away." "Please." But before the butler could even step away, the door burst open with a crash. Rain swept in, and there he was, Daniel Harper, soaked, his eyes wild with fury. 2 security guards reached for him, but he shoved them aside, his glare fixed on Sarah. "Thought you could hide from me, did you?" Daniel's voice was a snarl, his soaked coat clinging to his broad frame. "Thought you could steal my kids and run off with some rich fool? Get out!" Alexander's voice was a sharp command, his body stepping between Daniel and Sarah. "You have no right to be here." "No right?" Daniel laughed, a cruel, bitter sound. "Those are my daughters." "Mine! You left!" Sarah's voice cracked, anger and fear twisting together. "You abandoned us. You didn't want them. You didn't want me. You think you can twist this around?" Daniel's voice grew louder, his fists clenching. "You think I'm the villain? You used me. You and your sob story, always needing something, always. That's enough." Alexander's voice was thunder, his calm shattered. "You will not speak to her like that. Not here." Daniel's eyes flashed, a twisted smile curling his lips. "Oh, the noble hero steps in. Let me guess you're here to play daddy now. You think money fixes everything?" "I think protecting them is all that matters," Alexander replied, his voice steady, his eyes burning with a fierce light. "And I won't let you hurt them." "Hurt them?" Daniel's voice was a mocking echo. "They're my daughters. I have a right to see them." "You have no right." Sarah's voice was sharp, her fear melting into fury. "You never cared. You walked away. You chose to leave." "I chose to get away from your mess," Daniel spat. "And now you think you can replace me? That I'll just disappear?" "Leave, Daniel." Alexander's voice was a low, dangerous growl. "Or I will call the police." Daniel's twisted smile didn't fade. "Go ahead, but this isn't over. You think a few guards and a fancy house can keep me away?" "You're wrong. Leave." Alexander stepped forward, his stance solid, his expression cold. "Or you'll be the one who disappears." Daniel hesitated, his gaze flickering between Alexander and Sarah. For a brief second, something dark flashed in his eyes, a hatred, a bitterness that twisted his face. But then he turned, his wet boots slapping against the marble floor, and he stormed out into the rain. The heavy door slammed shut, the silence that followed thick and suffocating. Sarah's knees gave way, and she sank to the floor, her breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. Alexander was at her side in an instant, his arms around her, his voice soft and steady. "It's okay." "He's gone. He can't hurt you." But Sarah's mind was racing, her chest tight with a fear that wouldn't fade. "He won't stop." "He never stops. He won't stop until..." "Until what?" Alexander's voice was a whisper, his hand gently stroking her hair. "Until he takes them," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He doesn't want them, but he won't let me keep them." He wants to ruin everything." "Then we won't let him." Alexander's voice was a promise, his arms tightening around her. "I won't let him take them. I won't let him hurt you." "You're not alone, Sarah." But even as he spoke, a cold shadow pressed against her heart. Because she knew Daniel Harper, and she knew the darkness he carried. He wouldn't just walk away.
The next morning the rain had stopped, but the tension remained. Alexander made calls, his voice a steady command as he arranged for legal protection, a restraining order, and more security around the estate. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being hunted. She sat by the window, watching Grace and Emma play in the garden, their laughter a fragile warmth in a world that felt like it was closing in. Her fingers brushed the silver ring on her hand, a habit she couldn't escape. "Mommy!" Grace's cheerful voice broke through her thoughts. "Look, we found a butterfly!" Sarah forced a smile, waving to them. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." But even as she smiled, a shadow loomed at the edge of her heart, a quiet growing fear that this fragile happiness could shatter at any moment. And somewhere beyond the walls of the estate, in the misty grey of the city, Daniel Harper's anger simmered. He had lost once. He wasn't going to lose again. The morning light poured into the grand dining room, but the warmth did nothing to melt the cold knot of fear in Sarah's chest. She sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, but the heat barely touched her. Across from her, Alexander paced, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, I need an emergency restraining order. Yes, immediately." Alexander's voice was sharp, his tone brooking no argument. "His name is Daniel Harper. He has made threats against Sarah Johnson and her daughters. No, they are in immediate danger. I don't care what it takes, just get it done." Sarah watched him, her heart pounding. She had seen Alexander angry before she had seen his calm exterior crack, but this was different. This was fury, edged with fear. Fear for her. Fear for the girls. "He won't stop, will he?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alexander's gaze softened as he ended the call, setting the phone down. "Not if we don't make him, but we will. I promise you that. But promises don't stop him." Sarah's voice trembled. "He's not just a threat. He's a monster. He doesn't care who he hurts. Then we'll make sure he can't hurt anyone." Alexander's voice was a steady resolve. He moved to her side, gently taking her trembling hands in his. "Listen to me, Sarah. I won't let him take the girls. I won't let him take anything from you." "But how?" she whispered, her eyes searching his. "He's their father." "Legally he has rights. Even though he abandoned them, he still has rights." "Not after what he's done," Alexander replied. "The restraining order will help. And I've spoken with a lawyer. We're going to fight this. We're going to take his rights away." Sarah's breath caught. "You can do that?" "With the right evidence, yes." His voice was calm but fierce. "We document everything, his threats, his violence. We show that he's a danger to you and the girls. We prove that he's unfit." Sarah's chest tightened. But he'll fight. He'll lie." "He always lies." "Then we'll make sure the truth is louder than his lies." Alexander's voice was a quiet promise. "You are not alone in this. I'm here. And I won't let you go through this alone." But even as he spoke, Sarah's fear didn't fade. Because she knew Daniel, his cruelty, his cunning. He would twist the truth. He would make her look like the villain. He would do anything to win. As the day stretched on, Alexander's lawyers arrived, a team of sharp-suited men and women who spoke in a language of legal terms and court procedures. They asked Sarah to recount everything, how Daniel had left, how he had threatened her, how he had tried to force his way into the mansion. "It's important to be honest," one of the lawyers, Ms. Collins, explained gently. "The court will look at your history with him. They will look for any sign of instability. We need to show that you are a loving, responsible mother and that he is a danger to your daughters." Sarah nodded, but the fear gnawed at her. "And what if they don't believe me?" Ms. Collins smiled kindly. "They will. Because the truth is on your side." But as the lawyers left, their words seemed to blur, a cold weight settling over Sarah's heart. The truth was a fragile thing.
and Daniel was a master of turning lies into weapons. That night, as the mansion settled into silence, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. Somewhere out there, Daniel was watching, waiting, plotting. Her fingers twisted the silver ring on her hand, her chest tight with dread. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Alexander stepped in, his expression gentle. "Can't sleep." Sarah shook her head. "I keep thinking, what if he wins? What if he takes them?" "He won't." Alexander's voice was firm, but his eyes were filled with a quiet pain. "He won't take them, Sarah. I won't let him." "But you can't promise that." Her voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You can't promise that a court won't believe him. That they won't take my girls away." "I can't promise what the court will say," Alexander admitted, his voice soft. "But I can promise that I will fight. That I will stand beside you. That I won't let you face this alone." Sarah's breath trembled, her chest aching. I can't lose them. They're all I have." "You won't lose them." Alexander crossed the room, kneeling before her, his hands gently holding hers. "Look at me, Sarah. You won't lose them, because we will fight together. I won't let you fall." For a moment, they simply stared at each other, his steady gaze, her tear-filled eyes. And then, without thinking, she leaned forward, her forehead resting against his. His touch was warm, his breath a soft whisper against her cheek. "I'm so scared," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know." His voice was a quiet promise. "But I'm here." The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, forms to sign, and statements to prepare. Sarah's anxiety gnawed at her, but Alexander's steady presence never wavered. Every time she began to doubt, he was there, a hand on her shoulder, a quiet word of comfort. And then came the call. Ms. Collins' voice was clear and strong. "The restraining order has been approved. Daniel Harper is legally forbidden from coming near you or the girls." A rush of relief swept over Sarah, her legs giving way beneath her. Alexander caught her, his arms steady around her. "It's okay," he whispered, a soft smile touching his lips. "You're safe." But even as she clung to him, her heart pounding with relief, a quiet fear lingered in the shadows of her mind. Because she knew Daniel. A piece of paper wouldn't stop him. Nothing would. That night, as she tucked Grace and Emma into bed, their soft breaths easing her fear just slightly, Sarah whispered a silent prayer, a desperate hope that the walls around them would hold, that Alexander's strength would be enough. But somewhere in the darkness beyond the mansion's towering gates, Daniel's fury simmered, and Sarah knew that this was far from over. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the mansion, casting a warm, golden glow across the grand living room. Sarah Johnson stood by the window, her fingers gently tracing the glass, her eyes fixed on the lush garden beyond. Grace and Emma ran among the blooming flowers, their laughter a sweet melodic echo that filled the air. For the first time in years, Sarah felt a sense of calm, a fragile peace that wrapped around her like a soft blanket. But even in this warmth, a shadow lingered at the edges of her heart, the shadow of Daniel Harper. But the court's decision had been clear. The restraining order was in place. Daniel had been warned any attempt to approach them would mean prison, and for now he had vanished, his threats fading into silence. But Sarah knew better than to believe in miracles. A gentle touch on her shoulder pulled her from her thoughts. Alexander stood beside her, his expression soft, his presence a steady comfort. "You okay?" he asked, his voice a quiet warmth. "Yes," Sarah whispered, leaning into his touch. I think I'm starting to be good." His lips curved into a faint smile. "Because there's something I want to show you." He gently took her hand, leading her through the grand hallway.
their footsteps a quiet whisper against the polished floors. They stopped in front of a tall double door, and with a soft click, Alexander pushed it open. Sarah's breath caught. The room was a cozy, sunlit space, soft couches, shelves lined with books, and a grand window that looked out over the garden. But what caught her attention most was the small wooden table in the center, set with 2 tiny chairs and a collection of colored pencils and paper. It's for the girls," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Alexander nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "They love drawing. I thought they should have a space of their own, a place where they can feel safe. A place that's theirs." Tears blurred Sarah's vision, and she turned to face him. Why? Why are you doing all this, Alexander?" "Because I love them," he whispered, his voice steady. "And because I love you." Her breath hitched, her heart pounding. Don't say that. It's the truth." He stepped closer, his hand gently cupping her cheek. "I made a mistake once. I was young, scared, and I let my fear control me. But I won't make that mistake again. Not with you. Not with them." "Alexander." Her voice was a broken whisper, her tears slipping free. "I don't know how to believe that." "Then let me show you." His thumb gently brushed away her tears. "Not with words. With actions. With time." "But what if it all falls apart?" she whispered, her voice thick with fear. "What if he comes back? What if I lose you?" "You won't." His voice was a quiet promise. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." For a long moment, they simply stood there, her forehead resting against his, their breath mingling in the soft light of the room. And then, as if a weight had finally lifted, Sarah leaned into him, her arms wrapping around his shoulders, her tears a quiet release. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "I know," he murmured, his arms warm and steady around her. "But we're stronger together." The days that followed were a slow, steady miracle. Grace and Emma filled the mansion with laughter, their drawings covering the walls of their new playroom. Sarah found herself smiling more, her laughter coming easier. And every time fear whispered at the edges of her mind, Alexander was there, a steady, quiet strength she could lean on. One crisp autumn morning, as the garden shimmered with dew, Alexander led Sarah to a small clearing beneath a flowering cherry tree. The sunlight danced through the leaves, painting their faces with warm, golden light. "Close your eyes," he whispered, his voice warm with a quiet excitement. Sarah smiled, closing her eyes, her heart racing. She felt his hands gently take hers, his fingers brushing against her own. And then, a soft pressure, something cool and delicate, slipping onto her finger. "Open them," he whispered. She did, and her breath caught. A ring, simple, elegant, a delicate band that sparkled in the morning light. Her gaze lifted to meet his, her heart pounding. "Sarah Johnson," Alexander whispered, his voice a quiet promise. "Will you marry me? Not out of guilt, not out of regret, but because I love you. Because I love Grace and Emma. Because you are my family." Tears filled her eyes, a soft, disbelieving laugh escaping her lips. "Are you sure you want to be part of this chaos?" "I want to be a part of everything," he whispered, his hands gently cupping her face. "The laughter, the tears, the chaos, all of it. I want you. I want them." "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, Alexander. Yes." His smile broke, warm and radiant, and he pulled her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was soft, sweet, and filled with all the love they had fought so hard to find. Grace and Emma's cheers filled the air as they ran toward them, their tiny arms wrapping around their mother and Alexander. Laughter, warmth, and light wrapped around them. A family bound not by perfection, but by love. In the months that followed, life became a beautiful, messy symphony. Alexander stood beside Sarah in court, his arm around her as the judge declared Daniel Harper's rights permanently revoked. A clean break, a final end. Their wedding was a quiet, intimate affair beneath the cherry tree. Grace and Emma, twirling in white dresses, their giggles a sweet melody. And as Alexander took Sarah's hands beneath the soft petals, his voice a gentle vow, she felt the fear finally melt away. I promise to love you, to protect you, and to never leave you again. And as Sarah whispered her own promise, she knew that this time, forever was real. In life, we often encounter storms that threaten to break us, leaving us feeling lost, alone, and forgotten. Sarah's journey is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a glimmer of hope. Her story teaches us that no matter how far we may fall, it is never too late to rise again. We are reminded that true strength is not about avoiding hardship, but about finding the courage to keep moving forward, even when the path is uncertain. Sarah's resilience, her unwavering love for her daughters, and her willingness to trust again show us that healing is possible, but it often requires letting go of fear and embracing the kindness of others. Alexander's redemption demonstrates that people can change, that regret can become a bridge to something better if we choose to act with love and integrity. In a world that can be cold and unforgiving, we must never underestimate the power of compassion, forgiveness, and second chances. We must remember that it is never too late to love, to be loved, and to rebuild a life worth living. Because no matter how broken we feel, there is always a chance for a new beginning.